Megan and Johanna here from Travelers Paranormal, and this is our last presentation in this October Challenge series. And this one is going to be one that we very recently gave at the Big Sky Paranormal in Butte, Montana. We were there in September, and it was a fantastic experience. Last year we spoke via Zoom. This year we went there in person. And so this is our presentation on cemetery exploring and the theory of the three deaths. Now, I know it's a little odd. In the other videos, we kind of skipped the introducing ourselves, but we're going to go back a little bit and talk about ourselves as a group and why we called ourselves Travelers Paranormal. Since we are talking about cemetery exploring, this is kind of going to fit, and you're going to see how it speaks to why we're interested in the paranormal. And we take this with us in our investigations. And the reason I say that is because, again, we do call ourselves travelers. The paranormal, not so necessary to the name, but we added it to distinguish ourselves from the well-known insurance company. So, travelers. Why did we call ourselves travelers? Well, to us, travelers and being a traveler is an openness and an experience of life, a willingness to explore new things and see new things. In 2020, not the year for it, I know it sounds strange, but in multiple different road trips, we went to all 48 contiguous states, a lot of different road trips. One of our stops when we were in Minnesota was at the Little Falls Granite Works, and it was a monument called the Traveler that they have built and set up, really showing off their work there. But at the base of the statue was a plaque. It said, "Traveler experiences life uniquely through their individual journey and are influenced by significant people, events, or places along the way. Traveler is meant to represent you and your story. Traveler is meant to serve as a reminder of how we are all interconnected, influenced by others, and that everyone's life story matters. May your travels be safe, inspirational, and meaningful." And when I first read about that statue, I knew this had to be one of our stops on that road trip because it really did speak to me about how I want to experience the world and this looking for understanding and openness that has brought us into interest for the paranormal.
And another aspect of kind of what we're trying to achieve is summed up in the word Sonder, which comes from the Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows. And that is a project that a poet put together to give words to emotions that people feel. And Sonder is a noun in this dictionary, and the definition is the profound realization that each random passerby is living a life as vivid and complex as your own, populated with their own ambitions, friends, routines, worries, and inherited craziness. An epic story that continues invisibly around you like an anthill sprawling deep underground, with elaborate passageways to thousands of other lives that you'll never know existed, in which you might appear only once, as an extra, sipping coffee in the background, as a blur of traffic passing on the highway, as a lighted window at dusk. And that idea of the fullness of other people's lives would seem like an obvious concept, but trying to make that idea stay present is part of our paranormal exploring, and it's part of our seeking to learn about these other souls and spirits that lived at different times.
So a little bit about our group. This is our October challenge for this year, going through the different presentations that we've given. And we've been a group for a while. Last October, we put together our top 31 pieces of evidence that every single day released a new one from 31 to 1 building up. How did we get to this point, right? Well, we always had an interest in the paranormal, and I think being twins kind of fed into that. We have got strange stories from when we were very young. But at first, we were not looking for the paranormal. It was kind of just finding us. It was in 2018 when we decided to go on our first paranormal investigation, and we went to the Crescent Hotel in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, and didn't really know what we were doing, but had a fantastic time. And that was it. That was all it took. We knew we were going to go looking again for the paranormal.
That was a good location to go to because they gave you a tour and they did a guided sort of paranormal, a little bit of guided paranormal exploring. They rent equipment, so it was a good place.
It was a good first stop. Yep. In April of 2019, we went to another phenomenal location, Octagon Hall in Franklin, Kentucky. And that is a spot that really has a little bit of everything. And the reason I pull that out is because we were talking to somebody. It was a public investigation, which is a great way to get into a location for the first time, like a little bit cheaper. Explore the spot, see what's up, and then you can build your own kind of game plan for if you want to do a private investigation there, which we have since done. But the reason I pulled this one up is because we were talking to somebody there, and they were like, "Oh, what group are you from?" And we're like, "Well, we're not any kind of group. We're just kind of on our own." He's like, "Oh, so you're your own group?" And we were like, "No." And he's like, "Well, you should be." And that was a great suggestion from him. And that's when we decided that we would form our own group. And the name Travelers kind of was a thing that we already had. So that's when we decided to form our group. April 2019, so the same month, just a couple weeks later, is when we went to the Monroe House in Hartford City, Indiana. The reason I pull that up is because for us as paranormal investigators, that was a great experience. I did a lot of research into that house. And I got to speak to paranormal investigator and author Richard Estep about some of the research I did, and I got, I mentioned on one of the pages in his books because some of my research was helpful to his book, and he's a wonderful author and very sharing of his experience and like guiding people and mentoring. He definitely shares the information that he has. And that connection, we're very proud of that. That I was able to, in a small way at least, help with his research information. In February of 2021, so we skipped a few years, we were at the Vale Mansion in Independence, Missouri, and that was the first time I filled out like a waiver that says if I hurt myself, I won't sue. But I filled it out using the Traveler's name, so that was the first time officially we were investigating under that name, which was awesome. In 2022, we went to Rockville, Indiana State Sanatorium. And the reason I'm going to pull that one out is because it was our first privately booked investigation. And it was 6 buildings. It was a huge property. We had it for like 16 or 18 hours all to ourselves, and just a great leap forward. And then a couple more that I'm going to pull out are Brooks Estate and Walton House. Brooks Estate in East Prairie, Missouri. Walton House actually right here in Tennessee. We went kind of early on and in their opening and advertising as haunted locations, and were able to get some evidence that showed those hauntings. So those are kind of like big milestones for us as a group.
So for our symbol that we came up with, we pulled from mythology and folklore from our background as Irish and Italian. And there's some figures on there. There's a hedgehog, that's good luck. There's a figure named Puccinell, who is a liminal stock figure in Italian, but specifically Neapolitan opera. And he, like I said, he's liminal. He is sometimes the smartest person, sometimes the dumbest person, sometimes very lazy, sometimes very hardworking, like all at the same time. Think kind of like a Shakespearean fool. And he's holding a shamrock, again, Irish luck. He's also holding a red pepper, which for Italians, again, specifically Napolitan, that wards away the malocchio or the evil eye. And there's also some numbers hidden in the tree, and the tree is indicative, is supposed to represent the tree Yggdrasil, the tree of life. And there's some numbers hidden in there, and that's again to Naples in Italy, and that's called smorfia. And it's a way to do dream interpretation. Either you dream of an object and you can look up what that object's number is, and that's the numbers that you should play in your lottery. Or if you keep seeing a number, you can look up and see what object that is. And that means that's what's trying to speak to you. And so the numbers that we have in there are 85, which is the souls in purgatory, 48, which is the dead man who speaks, and 42, which in Smorfia is coffee, which is also, conveniently enough, the answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything. It's coffee.
Coffee. It is. Back to the business of the presentation. Enough about us. The theory of the 3 deaths. What do we mean by that? Well, it is said that everybody dies 3 times. The first death is your biological death, right? Pretty clear. We all understand what that one is. The second death is your burial or your funeral rites, your cremation, when your physical body is laid to rest. The third death is the last time a person's name is spoken or called with some intention. So those are the 3 deaths that we're going to be talking about, and you're going to see how that ties into the cemetery exploring that we did.
So while we were researching this, and again, I mentioned that our symbol pulls from folklore. We both have a love of folklore. When we were in college and picking majors, Johanna looked at it as us having 3 questions, kind of 3 paths to take. And
there was political science, which told you the history of what humans have done. There was literature, which tells you
what humans could have done.
And then, in my opinion, and the one I ended up choosing was philosophy, because I was hoping that that would be able to give me the understanding and the why behind what people do. And that also tied into my study of psychology, philosophy and psychology, hoping that I could better understand the why behind human behavior and action.
And so when we talked about folklore, when we talked about making the paranormal normal in one of our previous talks, we spoke about folklore being the early explanations for the paranormal. And so folklore, important to us in our research. And when we were researching the theory of the 3 deaths, we found that it was very cross-cultural. There are elements of this in multiple different cultures. The most famous and the most clear of this is in the Day of the Dead in Hispanic cultures, where it's very important to have this day dedicated to those who have passed. And we're Catholic and we celebrate All Souls Day basically on the same day.
Yep.
And that is very much the same idea. And we found this in African traditions, we found this in Asian traditions. So it is very cross-cultural. But what are we looking at? Well, so the importance of remembering someone and looking at it etymologically, remember comes from the late Latin re and the Latin memor, which means mindful. It becomes the late Latin rememorare, which is to call to mind, Old French remember, and then Middle English remember. So, okay, call to mind. Well, what is call? Call can come from the Old Norse kalla, meaning to summon loudly, to the Old English kilian, to English call. Summon loudly. Well, what is summon? Summon comes from Latin sub, secretly, plus monera, to warn, which gives us the Latin somonera, give a hint, Old French sommondre, and Middle English summon. And with that idea of a warning, that gives some kind of an intention to it as well. Again, we were looking for examples of this, and one of them we found from basically literature, several of them we found from literature. But in The Emperor's Club, a movie based off of a fantastic movie based off of, some people don't like it, but it's a good movie based off of a book. And in it, there is a Chekhov's gun of a sign that is over a door. And on it, it reads, I am Shutruk Nahunte, son of Halatush in Shushniak, beloved servant of the god in Shushniak, king of Ansham and Susa, who has enlarged the kingdom, who takes care of the land of Elam. When the god in Shushniak gave me the order, I defeated Sipar. I took the steel of Naram Sin and carried it off, bringing it to the land of Elam. For in Shushanak, my god, I set it as an offering. And so this sign is basically what remains of a spoil of war. Shutruk Nahunte had gone and conquered a neighbor, basically, and took this monument that they had, their stele of Naram Sin, and put his sign over it. And so he's remembered because of the inscription that was carved on the spoil of war, but all that in the movie, for sure, in history, like, they know a little bit more about him. But in the movie, all that they really know about him is just from this sign. And then moving forward to 1609, we have William Shakespeare's Sonnet 17, which reads, "Who will believe my verse in time to come, if it were filled with your most high deserts? Though yet heaven knows it is but as a tomb which hides your life and shows not half your parts. And in fresh numbers number all your graces. The age to come would say this poet lies. Such heavenly touches ne'er touched earthly faces. So should my papers, yellow with their age, be scorned like old men of less truth than tongue. And your true rights be termed a poet's rage and stretched meter of an antique song. But were some child of yours alive that time, you should live twice, in it and in my rhyme." And so this is talking about surviving after death and being remembered both in a work of art and also in the progeny of a person. Next, we come to Ozymandias by Percy Shelley, which was published January 11th, 1818. "I met a traveler from an antique land who said, 2 vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things, the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed. And on the pedestal these words appear, My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far and away." So in this poem, we are introduced to Ozymandias, who built this monumental structure to himself, trying to be remembered as this fear-inspiring victor. But this monument has collapsed in the passage of time, and kind of this is telling us that we can't control how we're going to be remembered. In 1965, Scottish author Alan Sharp wrote A Green Tree in Ged, and in it he writes, "But when at last the threads of memory rot, and the rememberers themselves are tombed, then the liberated dead move in silence, flit to the old open field of the truly buried, and there in sight of the living they relax, and at last rest." And in this passage, what he's describing is 2 cemeteries. One of them is kept, manicured, visited, and the other one in this country cemetery, the other side of it, is grown over and has gone wild, basically. And so what he's saying is the souls in the manicured cemetery, while they're being visited, are kept in a way through the visitors as they take care of it. But once there is now no one to visit them anymore and the rememberers themselves are tombed, now those spirits go to the other side and the wild side, and there they are at rest and fully left. And in 1989, Irvin Yalom wrote Love's Executioner, and in that he wrote, "You know, there is no one alive now who was grown up when I was a child. So I, as a child, am dead. Someday soon, perhaps in 40 years, there'll be no one alive who has ever known me. That's when I will be truly dead, when I exist in no one's memory. I thought a lot about how someone very old is the last living individual to have known some person or cluster of people. When that old person dies, the whole cluster dies too, vanishes from living memory. I wonder who that person will be for me, whose death will make me truly dead." Talking about, a partial death as you move through the ages, and people stop remembering or being able to remember you at certain ages, and then finally you at all, just because everyone has passed. So when the last person who remembers you passes away, then you are, that is your third death. And also you can think about when you die, like how many other people will now no longer have a rememberer to keep them alive. And then finally, in 2009, David Eagleman wrote some, and that has the most succinct statement of what the three deaths are, where he writes, there are three deaths. The first is when the body ceases to function. The second is when the body is consigned to the grave. The third is that moment, sometime in the future, when your name is spoken for the last time. So kind of like Johanna said, the first death, we all understand that pretty clearly. But let's talk about the second death right now. So that is when you're consigned to the cemetery, or your body is dealt with. And so etymologically, there's a difference between a cemetery and a graveyard. Cemetery comes from the Greek koimeterion, or sleeping place. Grave is from Proto-Germanic grava or grava, grave, and it means to dig. A cemetery is usually run by a civil authority, and a graveyard or a churchyard are usually run by a church. As I said, this is very cross-cultural, and so lots of different cultures have different burial rites that are meant to aid that second death. They're meant to aid the dead on their journey and also aid the living in their mourning. And so there might be specific steps to follow in the preparation of the body. Some burials include leaving tools and accoutrements from when the person was alive, either tools that they used in their lifetime or tools that will be useful to them as they pass. There's a bunch of different cultures that leave coins on the eyes so you can pay the ferryman as he takes you on to your final resting place. There are different time periods within which burial is supposed to happen for different cultures, and that is setting not so much a limit, but setting a portion of time.
Like an expectation.
An expectation for the mourning, and that is meant to help the living move on as they go through their mourning. So cemeteries in lots of different places before they were public parks, they would be green spaces used for the community. They might just be within the walls of the city or just outside of the walls. And so it would be a place that people could gather. Even in rural areas, there might be picnics and races and such in them. 1711 is when the rural or garden cemetery was being suggested by British architect Christopher Wren, where they would use landscaping in a park-like setting to make it a more pleasurable place to visit. You'd have well-planned walkways, you'd plant specific trees and bushes and flowers. It was a little bit weird for people at first, but they eventually kind of grew into accepting it. It was a lot of the times reserved only for richer society members because you would have this artistry. If you think about Ozymandias building his monument, you would have monuments, memorials, mausoleums, columbaria, and the goal would be to memorialize some aspect of yourself in these mini monuments to yourself or to those who have passed.
Like the accordion guy. In the cemetery in Springfield, Illinois.
That's the one that he's actually still alive, right?
Yes.
And he has built his monument for when he dies.
Yes.
Or like your favorite
William Driver.
Yes, but also the creator of the Ouija board.
Oh yeah. Oh geez, what's that guy's
That's
name?
where Booth is buried, right?
Yes, in Maryland. I can't think of the name. The guy he didn't create it, he patented it. So someone else created it long before him. But he was like, I bet I could make this mine.
I can make.
And he patented it. His name might be Elijah Bond. That feels right. But anyway, on the back of his grave is a giant Ouija board, and I went to the cemetery to see his grave. And also, John Wilkes Booth is buried in the same cemetery, and I put a Lincoln Head penny on his headstone.
More on that later.
But also my car died in the cemetery, and I thought I was gonna have to get it towed, and I think AAA allowed for a tow up to 250 miles, and I was legit 245 miles away from home. But thankfully we were able to get the car started. Happy story. Weird cemetery.
In Paris, the Père Lachaise Cemetery opened in 1804, and that was one of the first garden cemeteries opened. Mount Auburn Cemetery near Boston was one of the early ones in the United States, and that was opened by the Horticultural Society in 1831. Again, it was about planting trees and plants and stuff like that and making it into a garden. Urban planner John Claudius Loudon was one of the first professional cemetery designers and wrote a book published in 1843 called On the Laying Out, Planting, and Managing of Cemeteries.
Good title.
And again, these are communal events. So the Gettysburg Address that President Lincoln presented was a dedication on November 19th, 1863 for the Soldiers National Cemetery at the Battle of Gettysburg. So that's a very famous speech, and the reason why it was given was for dedicating this cemetery. Eventually, as sentiments changed, there was a reaction against the potentially haphazard layout of the wandering paths and also the varying quality of monuments. Again, think of Ozymandias now as people are going to these cemeteries and seeing the crumbling monuments of some of them. And so what we had is we got the lawn cemetery starting to be developed, and Adolf Strout in Cincinnati in 1855 introduced that style. Julie Rugg published a book in 2006 called Lawn Cemeteries, The Emergence of a New Landscape of Death. And she notes 4 kind of factors that explain the growth of the lawn cemeteries. One was the deterioration of Victorian cemeteries, again, the monuments kind of crumbling and being more of a remembrance of death. It's the Latin, like, memorare.
Yeah.
Sorry, I put myself on the spot. But it's a remembrance of death. It's a trope in a lot of different artwork. And so that ended up being that as they were seeing the crumbling pieces. So deterioration of the cemetery. Also a self-conscious rejection of Victorian aesthetics in favor of modern alternatives, more clean, less ornate. There are also resource difficulties, particularly after World War II, that kind of constrained the maintenance of the rural cemeteries and the garden cemeteries, and a growing professionalism in cemetery management, which, to Johanna's point, leads to a more utilitarian sort of, when it becomes less about the artistry and more about the
purpose.
Yes. Also, different cultures have different ways that the bodies will be placed when they are being buried. And so, for instance, Muslim cemeteries, the graves face whatever direction Mecca is. Also, in different cultures, a lot of graves face east. That started with sun worshippers in ancient Egypt and Greece, for instance, facing them so they'd be greeted by the sun. There are a lot of Christian cemeteries where the graves, in graveyards and churchyards, where the graves face east. That's from Matthew 24:27. For as lightning cometh out of the east, and shineth even unto the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Also, in those cemeteries that face east, a lot of times clergy will be buried facing west, so that theoretically on that day of judgment, as the souls rise out of their graves facing east, the clergy will rise out of their graves facing west and be facing their flock. A very interesting situation that we encountered at a cemetery in
Illinois, Ashmore, Illinois,
is if the date of death is not exactly known, then the stonecutters or whoever assigns the cemetery, the stone, might put on basically an impossible day. And so we encountered a stone that has February 30th as the date of death. They didn't know exactly when it was. It was sometime around the end of February, and so it was given February 30th. Talked about the garden cemetery, so planting different flowers, and they all have different meanings behind them. And so there's a lot of different reasons why you would plant flowers. You know, orchids are eternal love, baby's breath, everlasting love, gladiolus, integrity, strength. So there's different reasons why you would use different flowers and different symbolism behind them from folklore and such. There are different cultures that will also leave stones, especially Jewish cemeteries, you'll see this. And those symbolize that love, honor, and memories of the soul of the loved ones are eternal. Also, you can see sometimes at cemeteries, if it's permitted, there might be candles, either if it's permitted actually burning, especially on, again, the Day of the Dead, or people might leave plastic ones There are some that look really good. But so that's, a flame meant to remember that soul. A lot of the times at children's graves, you'll see toys and then also coins. In ancient times, you'd have people buried with coins for the payment for the ferryman, like I said. Military, in the military too, coins can have different meanings. So if someone leaves a penny, it can just be visiting and honoring the service and family of the deceased. A nickel might mean that they trained at boot camp together. A dime means that they served alongside each other. And a quarter could mean that they were with the person when they passed. I mentioned planting the garden cemeteries with the specific trees. A lot of times you use evergreens because those symbolize eternal life, life after death, and rebirth. The yew tree is known as the tree of the dead, and it purifies the dead as they arrive in Hades. Also yew trees, the heartwood or the inner wood is reddish, and the sapwood or the outer wood is white, so it can symbolize body and blood. Oak tree is strength and longevity. It could be the tree of life. Cypress has deep ancient association with death and the underworld. Like I said, ash for Yggdrasil. That's the tree of life. On the day of Ragnarok, the last humans are going to hide up in the branches and be saved so that they can bring life back to the world afterwards. Mulberry trees are the tree of life in Chinese mythology, where the sunbird lives in them in the eastern sea atop a mulberry tree, linking heaven and earth, kind of like Yggdrasil, which is a linking tree. Mulberry trees don't bud until well after frost, and so they symbolize patience. And then there's different statues. I mentioned these monuments in the cemetery where they might have different symbols on them. They might have a book for the book of life. They might have chains if they're broken, that separation of the soul from the body. That very cool grave that we went to that had February 30th on it, it had acorns on it. It had leaves, branches with leaves on them. And it had cut branches, making it look like it was a funeral pyre that was part of this monument. And the very cool thing about that is that basically it was symbolizing the stages of life. The acorn with birth, the leafy branches for life, and then the funeral pyre for death. And so you can sometimes see that in other places that might use a caterpillar, a chrysalis, and a butterfly in order to show the 3 stages of lives. You can have columns. If it's a broken column, it might symbolize an early death. So there's just a lot of different symbols that can be used, and that are it's this work and this artistry that is put into the monuments, again, to help the person be remembered. It might be a scroll, and that scroll is supposed to be the history of the person written out. If the book ends are rolled up, it could be life unfolding. It could be an uncertain life. The past is hidden. The future is hidden. So a lot of different meanings in that. A fun one, which is not always followed though, is if you see soldiers on horseback statues, if both front hoofs are in the air, that could symbolize for a death in battle. If one hoof is raised, death due to wounds that were suffered in battle but not actually passed in battle. All 4 hooves on the ground, person died of natural causes. And if the rider is dismounted, it could mean that the horse and rider both died in battle. A lot of different things. You might also see hourglasses, and an hourglass on its side is for time being stopped for the dead. Also with the importance, again, second death, but the importance of the burial and memorializing the dead, there are a lot of fraternal orders or societies that basically were communal, but also kind of insurance in order to make sure that that there was money provided for burial. And a lot of times they would have mission statements where they are going to provide burial for their members' widows and children, and the indigent. So you have the benevolent protective order of the Elks, and so if you go into a cemetery, you might see a giant elk statue.
You might see it.
You might, those do happen. And so that is a symbol that section of the cemetery is actually from the Order of the Elks. The Freemasons did this, and they have different levels too, depending on how far into Freemasonry you go. Johanna's favorite is the woodmen of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a lot of different versions and names of them. They went through some changes as they continued. They were specific. They would have, they started out with the men's group, and then they had a women's group that was created, and then they came together and were all gender. They were specifically, they said they had no religious requirement, which a lot of them did. And they said specifically, we are for the Jew and Gentile, the Protestant and Catholic, the agnostic and the atheist. And they, like the Oddfellows, would provide gravestones. The way the woodman worked is you did not actually have to be a woodcutter, which we didn't know at first.
Yeah, at first I was like, man, there's a lot of
woodcutters here.
Woodcutters passed away in this.
But so they would plan, a tree trunk for an adult member, and then 3 stacked blocks for the children. And whenever a member passed away or a family member passed away, the stone cutter would be sent with the basic template that they're supposed to cut, and then they would be able to personalize it and cut the stone for them. Their motto was Dum Tacet Clamet, though silent he speaks. And that's a good motto for this memorializing that they did. And so the question we come to is, with the second death here, if someone has put so much time into the type, layout, design, stonework, path, artistry, symbolism, shouldn't we go see it? Yeah. No one would bat an eye about going to speak to a loved one. What about a stranger? A stranger could just be a friend that you haven't met yet. And so that is how we come to cemetery exploring. And then that brings us to the ethics of cemetery exploring. And this is a debated topic. There's a lot of people who feel like you shouldn't do it. They feel like the dead are there to rest. You should let them rest. They feel like it's exploitative. And you can imagine if you're visiting a family member who has just passed and someone's doing an investigation at the graveside, you might be like, are they bothering my family member that passed? If you think about famous people, or just large events, it can feel exploitative because it can feel like the people are taking advantage of a grieving family. You've got people who insert themselves into investigations all of the time. It happened with the Lindbergh baby. You had Mary Todd Lincoln become very obsessed with spirit photography because she suffered, 2 of her children died very young. Her husband obviously died.
Very suddenly.
Very suddenly and publicly, and she couldn't mourn privately. And she ended up becoming very obsessed with the spirit photography because she was trying to find a way to reach out. But, was she being taken advantage of? If someone said that they communicated at the graveside with Abraham Lincoln, were they taking advantage of her? Again, the Lindbergh baby, not even just anything paranormal. There's tons of people who confess to the kidnapping. So, people,
nothing to do with it.
People will, nothing to do with it. People will exploit tragedies. And there's a real honest, debate and discussion to be had about a public tragedy and when is it too soon. I know for me, we're originally from New York. I know for me, I would probably never, I don't think, investigate at any of the sites of 9/11, either Pennsylvania or New York or DC. Other people might. I personally wouldn't. When is it still too soon? When is the pain too raw still? So there's a location that we've gone to that has a story of haunting of a baby. And
there, in my research study, there was the loss of a baby back in the very early 1900s in the area, but there's also a baby that passed away in the early 2000s. And when we investigated there, and other people who have investigated there, if they get some evidence of a baby, they might be a little bit slow to put that evidence online or anything like that, because the baby that died in the 2000s, that's still a real loss for the baby's mother, who is still alive to this day and has kind of followed up on that location to the point where there have been times, and I don't know how recently it's been now, but there were times in the past where someone had a recording of a baby and the mother reached out like, is that my baby? Is my baby trapped there? So while we're, exploring and looking for connections, that loss, every spirit or whatever, that we may communicate with, there's a family, there's friends that may very well still be living. So you want to make sure that you're not being exploitative, that you're being respectful, and that you're paying attention to what you're doing.
And then that brings us, though, to the question where if there is a spirit looking to communicate, isn't the least that we can do is be present to listen?
And if you are going to be there investigating, you just want to make sure that you are being respectful, that you have integrity. You're not there looking to exploit the situation or anything like that. You're there, and we're there. The reason we do paranormal investigations is to understand and make a connection, just like I would with a living person, a connection with someone who has passed away. And I think that we get our answer of should we explore a cemetery, like Megan said. If there's a spirit there that wants to communicate, why not go and communicate with them? If there's a spirit that doesn't want to communicate, just like any conversation with people, if you start talking to someone and they don't want to talk to you, you end the conversation. But if someone does want to talk to you, why ignore them just because they're, in the cemetery? And I think we have a good example of the answer to should we or should we not. It came from City Cemetery in Nashville, Tennessee. It is the oldest cemetery in Nashville, Tennessee. And to give a little bit of an explanation, we had been there at night, and this is a location we've been to multiple times. Very friendly location, very communicative location. Always have a good time. We were there at night once, and we've been there at night a few times, but one of the times when we were there at night, it was not friendly. It was not communicative. Megan was listening to the S box, which is the device that goes through radio stations very quickly, and you might get a word or a sentence across multiple different radio stations. In theory, that is a spirit manipulating it to communicate. Megan was getting a lot of negative words. She didn't say everything that she was hearing. She said some of it, but it was very negative. It was definitely aimed at being scary. Great for someone that wanted to go get scared, but that's not how the cemetery normally is. We ended the investigation very quickly. I said to Megan, I don't know, tapped her on the shoulder. I said, I don't know what's going on, but this isn't the way things normally are. Something is not right. It is telling us very clearly that it doesn't want anyone there. So let's go home and we can come back at another time. And we did. We came back, I think, a couple of days later. I don't think it was the very next day. But Megan had the S box again, and I'll let the video play and really speak for itself. But we were asking what was going on. This isn't like you normally. And the reason I'm going to play this clip is, one, we get the explanation for what was going on, but we get this beautiful moment at the end where literally the spirits give us the permission to, yes, come, help us speak, go for a walk. And I'll let that play now.
Alright, this is Meg and Joe from Travelers Paranormal, and we are at the City Cemetery in Nashville, Tennessee. Now, this is a location that we've come to several times, and usually have really good interaction. But if you've been watching our videos this month, you'll see that the last time we were here, we ended up leaving early and kind of getting a lot of negative answers. So Megan didn't even say half of what she was hearing, so I'm going to let her describe it a little bit.
Yeah, kind of like Joe said, I was hearing some very negative words, but I said a couple of them out loud, but then other ones I just...
Yeah, talk louder than the cicadas.
I said some of them, but then others are just like getting deaf and die and other things that were a little bit darker that we haven't experienced when we were here before. And at one point, I heard a laugh, and I know I told Joe that, but it wasn't like a friendly laugh. It was kind of like a nasty laugh, and it was being very aggressive. And it's something that we've never experienced here. You can see this is beautiful. The butterflies flying around right now.
Yeah.
It really helps. And the willows and stuff. This is a beautiful cemetery. It is well loved. The people who take care of it, they do cemetery tours, so there's people coming to visit. We've talked before in other postings and stuff about people talk about the 3 deaths. When you actually die, the last time someone who knew you passes away, and then the last time your name is spoken. So there's people who come, they do tours and stuff like that, and they kind of keep the memories of the people who were here alive that way. And so we've never really experienced anything dark before, so it was very strange that time, and we don't know why. or what was different that time.
So to start off our visit here, we are going to do an S-Box session, kind of in the same place that we were at before.
So I've already heard it say, a stranger visited here. Don't know.
So this is Megan, I'm Johanna. Last time we were here, we were getting a lot of kind of negative feelings that don't usually come from this cemetery. This is a peaceful place. You heard us say that, so are you telling us that maybe there was something strange here or something not normal here that night?
People not
She said
friendly.
people not friendly. Oh. Who's not friendly? Which people?
Teenagers.
Oh.
Using some paint.
Did somebody vandalize the cemetery?
Did someone come in? Have you seen anything about someone vandalizing?
I just said that same thing. I don't know of anything. Put your headset back on. We're talking here. So were you giving off a negative feeling that night because you've recently been vandalized and you were afraid that was going to happen again? But I am sorry that you had someone come here. No? Okay. So somebody came here and was maybe disrespectful, and so you were just kind of trying to protect yourself and ward people off at night. That would be interesting. The cemetery, some kids break in for a spooky night, and you're like, oh, I'll show them. Alright, so maybe we have our explanation as to what was going on, but I promise you that Megan and I will always come here with the utmost respect. We want to learn about you and know the history of the people that are buried here. That's our interest.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Is it okay with you if we go and continue to some other locations in the cemetery? Visit some other souls and resting places?
Help us, spirits. Talk.
Yes, that's what we want to do.
Remember.
Yep. Okay then, with your permission, we are going to go to a few other locations in the cemetery, and then we might use our dowsing rods here to kind of find a new location.
To us.
Yes.
Go for a walk.
Yes. Perfect. All right. I do appreciate your openness and your permission. We will not hurt anything.
So that's kind of a really neat experience to have. And we've had that in City Cemetery other times where, we show up and they're like, oh, you're back. Time for your walk now. And so those spirits are very, very welcoming. There was another time where we were in Hannibal, Missouri, and we were investigating in a cemetery, and we started communicating with what we eventually understood to be a child spirit. And the child spirit, just like any child, just wanted some company, to the point where we were asking questions, and there was a few times where we asked a question for directions that could have made us leave the spot that we were in. And when we did that, the child wouldn't answer. So, for example, we asked if the child was buried there with any other family members and if it could point the dowsing rods to where their family members were. The child refused, even though they had been doing fantastic moving the dowsing rod, answering. After we said, we're just asking you to point in that direction. We aren't going to go there. We aren't going to leave. We're going to stay right here with you, speaking to you. The child resumed answering. They just wanted a communication. They wanted someone there to speak to them, so why not be there to speak with them? And I'll let that play too, because that's also a good example of what we're doing when we're in cemeteries.
If your parents are buried here with you, can you cross, or buried here too, can you cross the rods? And if not, can you open them wide?
Your parents are buried here. Can you put the rods back straight, please?
Okay.
Put the rods back straight.
So your parents might be buried here, but you had more family that traveled.
If you had more family that traveled, can you open the rods up?
Okay. So he's not alone here.
Can you make the rods go straight? Thank you.
We will be the last ones back on this bus.
Yeah, they're going to have to make us go, buddy. We're talking to you. Can you point to where your parents are buried? Or if your parents are buried right here as well, can you cross the rods? Either point to where your parents are buried, or is there a mosquito on my neck?
No, I don't see anything.
Okay. Oh. Then. Either.
Let yourself get set again.
Yeah. Sorry. Oh, there wasn't a mosquito there. All right, buddy. I'm gonna put the rods back up. Can you leave the rods at straight, please? Can you point to where your father is buried? Or if your father is buried here with you, can you cross the rods?
Okay.
Can you make the rods go straight again, please? Can you, what?
I'm trying to think of how to phrase this in yes and no questions.
Can you point to where your mother is buried? Or if your mother is buried here with you, can you open the rods? Can you point to where your mother is buried? Or if your mother is buried here with you, can you open the rods? If your mother is buried here with you, can you close the rods? If your mother is buried somewhere else, can you open the rods?
I can't tell if it's trying to cross or if it's trying to point.
Buddy, I'm going to reset the rods.
The next question would be if they were sick or if they were hurt.
Well, let's try to figure out if she's buried here or buried somewhere else.
Okay. All right, buddy.
We're not going to go. If she's buried somewhere else, we're not going to go there. We're going to stay here with you. If your mother is buried with you, can you cross the rods? And if she's buried somewhere else, can you point to where she is buried? We're going to stay here with you regardless. Let's try that again, since you hit me with the rod.
It's okay, buddy.
We're staying here with you.
As long until the bus leaves.
Until they make us leave. If your mother is buried here with you, can you cross the rods? If she is not, can you point to where she is buried?
So,
I mean, like, there are tombstones, obviously. So
it doesn't seem like he's trying to cross. It seems like he's trying to point.
Now, I've already alluded to some of the devices that we use, so I'll very quickly, even though I really did, explain our method and the two main devices we use. The first one we use is the S-Box. So like I said, it's the device that's going to go through radio stations very quickly. You hear and then you might hear a word or a sentence, and if you do, it's across multiple different radio stations, right? So in theory, a spirit is manipulating that to give us a word or give us a sentence. We use the S-Box, usually Megan is listening to it, and we do that what's called Estes method. The name comes from Estes Park, Colorado, where the Stanley Hotel is, because Carl Pfeiffer, Connor Randall, and Michelle Tate were the first ones to really use this Estes method.
And like publicize it.
There may have been others, but they are the ones that made it famous. So they get it named for their location. And it's a blind experiment. So Megan will be listening to the S-Box, and she will be wearing noise-canceling headphones. I will be asking questions. The reason we do that is that Megan doesn't know what the questions are that I'm asking. And as a result, when she's listening to this this thing that's scrolling through radio stations really quickly, if she hears a word, her mind can't seek to make it make sense to my question. Totally unintentional in her part. If you hear, if you hear a question and then you hear a word, maybe it sounds like you asked for a name and the word was kind of a little ambiguous, but you're thinking name, you're like, oh, Sue, but maybe it really said blue or something like that, something that can be easily confused. If Megan doesn't know what the question is, her mind can't seek to make an answer that makes sense. She's just purely giving me what she hears on that S box. Sometimes also she will be blindfolded. That is not why it's called the blind experiment. It is called the blind experiment because she lacks some of the information. And sometimes she doesn't wear a blindfold because I may have walked her into things unintentionally. Very unintentionally, but the spirit said ouch when it happened, so it was kind of funny.
That was funny.
That was at Cleburne Park. We don't play the S box out loud. Again, we're doing the Estes method, so Megan's listening to it. But the other reason to do that is so that it's not playing out loud, so that if someone is in the cemetery visiting their family members, we're not making noise and disturbing them. We are, being respectful in that. The other device we're going to use is dowsing rods, which was a fun device that we hadn't really used very often. And then at Hannibal was the first time that we did because we were on a historic tour. And I didn't realize that there was going to be a paranormal investigation part of it, so I didn't have any devices with me. But they did have dowsing rods. They handed them out. We got to play and experiment with dowsing rods for a little bit, and we added that to our repertoire. And that is helpful for asking binary questions or being pointed in a direction. So if we say, is there any spirits who want to communicate with us and let us know where you are, and both dowsing rods point to the right, then we know, oh, let's go to the right. We can try and find our spirits. So that's what we're using most often. And then just kind of a common, like you would any conversation, the starting point is usually just like how I started this video. I'm Johanna, this is Megan. Would anybody like to communicate with us?
So while we're going through the cemeteries, kind of bring us back to that etymology that we looked at before for remembering, which brought us through calling and summoning. What does it mean to say someone's name? And this is where intention becomes important. And so it's not as simple as just saying a name. Every time the traffic reporter starts talking about the Lincoln Tunnel or the Deegan, they're not summoning those people. President Lincoln doesn't get called every time you talk about the Lincoln Tunnel in a traffic crash. There needs to be some kind of intentional remembering.
Yeah, or else it'd be every 15 minutes.
Yeah, right? And so when we think about intention, what are we talking about here? So intention is a word from the Middle English. It means emotion, feelings, heart, mind, mental faculties, and understanding. It comes from the late 14th century, intention, purpose, design, aim, or object. From the Old French, again, intention, intent, purpose, aspiration, will, and thought. And from Latin, intentionem, nominative of intentio, a stretching out, a straining, exertion, effort, and attention. So, while we're trying to understand our purpose and our intention and the attention that we are giving to this, what exactly is happening here? And so people can ask, well, are we summoning them? Are we keeping the spirits trapped, perhaps against their will? Think again to those 2 cemeteries we talked about. Maybe the spirits just want to be at rest, but they're in that manicured and taken care of and called back section, so they can't truly rest. Well, I don't think that that's what's happening. And for that, kind of pull to the Tibetan Book of the Dead. While researching it, the Tibetan Book of the Dead talks about 3 bardos or stages of death. And so we kind of, in that book, they take place over 49 days. I'm not ascribing a specific time here, but we kind of took that to look at these 3 deaths and line them up with that. So the 3 bardos are the painful bardo of dying. And it's painful because at the end we let go of life and the familiar and step into the unfamiliar. That's our physical death. Then there's the luminous bardo of Dharmata, where all reality is opened in front of the existence as pure mind. Again, this is kind of that second death, when your body has been interred or cremated or however your culture or your wishes are, and your soul is now free. And then there's the karmic bardo of becoming, and in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, this is preparation in order to be ready for rebirth and reincarnation. And so that's the third death. Maybe the third death is going into reincarnation. Maybe the third death is going into a final resting place. For that, we don't have any answers. That's why we do what we do. But those bardos kind of line up with that idea of the three deaths, and that last one is that third death. So I don't think that we are necessarily trapping the souls. I think when souls are ready to move on, they'll move on. But then who are we communicating with? And so for that, I don't think that spirit is held there. I think that what happens is that there is something like a thought form, referred to as an egregore, of the person with whom we are trying to communicate. And so if you think about the intention of trying to talk to them, that intention is also what creates this thought form.
It really comes from two different experiences at Cleburne Park. Cleburne Park is one of the locations associated with the Second Battle of Franklin. We've got a video on that where we kind of broke down our different investigations there, and also a very, very active area. So there was 2 times where we were at Cleburne Park, multiple times, but 2 times specifically. One time was fun. It was a challenge where I was supposed to take someone to go on a paranormal investigation and not tell them where we were going, and see if through the communication they could figure out where we were. So obviously I blindfolded Megan, put noise canceling headphones on her, put her in the car, and started driving around. And by the amount of time we were driving, she could kind of try and narrow down to where we were going. We had a few different possible locations. I think I drove around like a little bit extra too to try and throw her off. But the location I was going to was Cleburne Park. And I want to say we were there for less than 10 minutes. And I'm like, is there somebody here who would like to communicate? And on the S-Box, Megan's listening to the S-Box. She's like, Patrick? And I'm like, great. You have a last name? He's like, Cleburne? Megan, and I'm like, well, now she knows exactly where we are. Then there was another time, which again is in that breakdown video of the Battle of Franklin, where we were there. And usually when I'm at a location, I ask for advice, right? The souls that we're communicating with, they were once human too. They had lives, they have experiences. They have advice that could be helpful to us. And so a lot of times when we're leaving a location, I ask, do you have any advice for us? Do you have anything you'd like to tell us? Something like that. We're looking to communicate. We're looking to learn. This experience was a little bit different because we get there, Megan is listening to the S-Box, and I'm doing some intro stuff, some B-roll type stuff, just filming different things, explaining where we are, doing that kind of stuff, saying what we're going to do. And then I finished and I said, this is Megan and Johanna. Is there anyone here who wants to communicate with us? And Megan's listening to the S-Box and she's like, are you ready yet? She didn't say, is it my turn? But that was definitely the feel. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm sorry. And we got this really, really stern warning of you have to come together. You can't keep arguing. And then for the next, we were there for a long time. It might have been 40 minutes. Basically just residual energy of what the sounds of battle would be. There's snipers there. I'm hit. I'm hurt. Go this way. Run up. Take the flank. All sorts of stuff that sounded like the callings of battle and the sounds of battle. And it made me think, who am I communicating with? Because the knowledge, the message, the answers all seem like Patrick Cleburne, but I don't think Patrick Cleburne is just hanging out at this park waiting for someone to come speak to him. And I definitely don't think that I have the power and the ability that when I go there and I'm like, I would like to speak with Patrick Cleburne, I don't think his soul or spirit magics over from wherever it is to come speak to me. So what am I, or who am I communicating with? I'm communicating with something or someone that has that knowledge and that information of Patrick Cleburne. But I don't think he's, just sitting in the park waiting. And that's where this egregore idea comes in.
And also, if you think about it, there's different figures who have different time periods kind of attached to them. And one aspect of this is from the Monroe house that we were at. And there's said to be children that haunt that. And Johanna did research and she found and identified who those children possibly could be. And they're children's spirits at the Monroe house.
But grew up.
They grew up. They lived full lives and
had children of their own.
So the question is, why are these children still children? Or if you think about President Lincoln, who we talked about before, there's different locations associated with him. There's the Presidential Museum. There's the Boyhood Home. There's the Lincoln Monument. And so what do those mean? Remember again, back to the quote that talked about, if there's no one alive now, when I was a child, I as a child am dead. So maybe that boyhood home, that spirit that's there, if you investigate there, which we have not done yet, but would be cool to do, I might expect to encounter
The
don't trespass.
The Presidential Museum would be a really cool place to investigate too. If anybody is watching this that works there, we would be very respectful.
Especially the ghost.
Yes. Lincoln's Presidential Museum, by the way, just sidebar, fantastic. Go visit it if you get a chance.
So I might expect to encounter a more childlike version of Lincoln if I was investigating at his boyhood home. If I went to the Presidential Museum or the house that is preserved that he lived in Springfield, Illinois, then I would perhaps expect to encounter an adult version of Lincoln who has more years on him. He's gone through tragedies. Not that childhood Lincoln actually had it so easy anyway, but he's, gone through a lot more.
Kicked in the head by a mule.
He's gone through a lot more, and I would expect to encounter this more three-dimensional still figure of Lincoln. And then if I went to the Lincoln Monument, honestly, and investigated there, which we also have not done, don't trespass. But if we went to the Lincoln Monument, I might think that the Lincoln that I would encounter there would be more
weary.
World weary, but also kind of more focused on specifically that presidential time period. And that's kind of like what Johanna's talking about with Cleburne Park. He lived a full life. Let's remember Sonder. He lived a full life, Patrick Cleburne did. But whenever we go to the park, we really seem to be encountering this spirit that is very much focused on that Civil War time period. And is that because the intention of people who go to that park are to remember him as a Civil War general? The intention of people who go to Lincoln's boyhood home are to learn about him as a child. His presidential museum is to learn about his full life. The Lincoln Monument is this austere version of him. And these can create different thought forms of the same person. I don't think that the person's spirit is necessarily in any of those places, but what we are encountering when we go to those places is a version of them that is kept alive through this intention, through this remembering, calling, or summoning.
So what we're going to do now is play a video for you that is a wonderful example of how we cemetery explore. So we will get to a cemetery and we will, like I said, start with a very quick introduction and then ask if there's someone there who'd want to communicate with us. And what happens is that it's like we get clues, right? We start getting things about them, things about their life, maybe a name, maybe an occupation, maybe a direction to go in, something to look at. And we will wander around the cemetery until we find their stone. We find the stone of the person that's communicating with us. We'll read that stone, again, with intention. I'm not just saying a name. I'm reading the stone and the information of that person with an intention to remember them. Remember that third death is the last time your name is spoken. So in some way, it's like bringing them back to life. You're speaking their name with that intention. And then oftentimes there's a short conversation, and then the spirit will move on and another spirit will take the place and start giving us clues, and then we will proceed through the cemetery until we find their stone. This one is at Cave Hill Cemetery. There was a young man named Joseph McFarland Humler. We had been getting clues for a while about World War I, about painful death, different things like that. And I felt like we had not found this person yet. We'd been there for several hours. We'd found several other gravestones that we'd been led to, but I felt like there was still someone that kept coming in and communicating we hadn't found. And this video is going to be, you'll see the cuts in time, but this is when we finally found his gravestone.
Up here. Up here. The hill. We are in Cave Hill Cemetery. There's a number of hills. USNRF.
Swordsman?
I'm not sure what USNRF stands for. Megan heard swordsman. Can you tell me your name? Who's the swordsman?
In the back?
In the back. In the back of the cemetery?
Where you walked?
Are you talking about when we walked up the hill and we were walking up to that big obelisk near the Armstrong family?
Obelisk?
Okay. I will motion to Megan. We're going to walk. Oh, she's not following. Oh, now she's following. Okay. I feel a little bit bad because my car is in the road, but the last time we were here they said not to pull off onto the grass or anything, so...
And steps?
Am I almost near the obelisk? There's one here. Could you maybe give me a last name that I'm looking for? Height. Past the path that each man trod.
That side?
That side? I wonder if that might be residuals. Sometimes it's hard when using the spirit box to tell, like, if something's responding or if it's residual. Like, imagine open up that one as in there, you know, opening up a grave or a mausoleum.
Killed?
France killed.
End wars? Fighting? Shots?
I was by someone before who was in World War I.
Go back?
Go back to the stone from World War I. I can do that. Is that where you would like us to go?
A long day?
Could you tell me some more about it?
Height?
Height. Here's the hard thing too, when we've gotten like a bunch of names like we got, it's hard to tell what's a sentence, what's multiple spirits communicating.
Cross?
Oh my lord! Across the street she just said, look what I just saw. Okay, we're coming. Holy gosh. In memory of Joseph McFarland Humler, born December 27th, 1892, killed in action at Soissons, France, July 20th, 1918. And Megan just said, you're right. So when we were hearing France, Thank you very much, Joseph. July 20th, 1918. The hills. Megan said the hills. So Joseph, could you tell us a little bit about yourself or whatever you'd like to talk about? Thank you for directing us over here. Do you have other family here, or is it just you here? So that plaque.
I am here in France.
You're here in France. Did they put a stone here? Dual. Did they put a stone here for you, but your body is still in France? It says endowed. I'm going to look them up, see if there's more information I can find.
I am free.
Joseph McFarland Humler, you hear him say that it was a long day. He had been injured in the Battle of Soissons, France. And there's a few things I want to pull attention to. One, he said, I'm here in France. I didn't know what that meant at the time. When I went home and I looked him up on Find a Grave, which is a wonderful website where you can, a lot of people use it for genealogy research. I've uploaded photos to it. If I go to a cemetery and there's photo requests from people, I can take pictures and upload it to them so that they can see their family members or their research subjects' graves. When I looked up his gravestone on Find a Grave is when I found that it was a cenotaph. I didn't know what that meant, but I looked it up. Basically what it means is that a headstone was built for him, but his body is buried elsewhere. So when we have that beautiful line of I am here and in France, he's buried in France, but his family, the Humler family, is very important to Louisville. His family built a headstone for him there. I couldn't have made that up. I didn't know what that word even meant. We also have him tell us that he is free, which was a beautiful idea as well, that he is free and no longer suffering. So that was Joseph McFarland Humler. We have another video, and this is just top. This is one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had. We were using Randonautica. We had set our intention as someone who wants to communicate, because again, that is number 48 and number 80, well, number 48 in our symbol. But we were looking for someone who wanted to communicate. Randonautica found a pinpoint for us. We went there. We said, I'd like to communicate. Is there someone here? And we got somebody named Seth who began interacting with us. And at the very end, leaves us with an absolutely beautiful message. And I'll let that play. All right, Meg and Joe from Travelers Paranormal, and we are going to try Randonautica. And we thought for our first time ever using Randonautica, we should try in a cemetery. So here goes nothing. We're going to hit generate. I don't know if it gives me a choice to say what my intention is, but since we're in a cemetery, our intention is going to be someone who wants to communicate. Okay, visualize your intention. So, no true anomaly available. There isn't any truly anomalous. So try again momentarily, or try increasing your radius. Now we really want to be in a cemetery. Someone who wishes to communicate.
Did it put you out of the cemetery?
No, I think I'm in the cemetery next door.
Right.
All right, so we are going to start the journey. Do you like when people come to visit you?
Always.
I've gotten a few names. Could you tell me your name? I'm Johanna. This is Megan.
Seth?
Seth. It's nice to meet you, Seth. Have you been here long?
Hi. I'm new
You're new.
here.
You're new here. It's very peaceful here. I like kind of the light rolling hills.
Softly.
Yes. It's a pretty old cemetery. Started in 1888. I like how
Time goes by
time goes by.
slowly.
Mm.
Sleep.
You're at sleep.
Rest.
I like that there's a mix of different trees here too. You're at rest. Do you get to travel around the property? Can you take walks around the property?
Sometimes.
Do you get to visit with other people here?
Sure. I get. To visit. Mother.
Oh, is your mother buried here as well, Seth?
Right there.
Do you have more family living in Nashville?
Friends.
You have friends?
Visit.
They come to visit you? If you could tell your friends anything, what would you tell them? Maybe they'll see this video. Slim, but maybe.
I love you.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Lisa.
I love you, Lisa. Okay, Seth. Man.
Bob.
And Bob, okay. Are you saying you love Bob too, or do you have another message for Bob?
He needs to visit me.
Bob needs to visit you. This is one of the coolest moments of my
Please.
life. I don't know who Lisa and Bob are, but like I really hope they see this video. So you love Lisa, Seth, and Bob needs to visit you.
Live good lives.
Live good lives. I'm literally crying. Megan is crying too. And she doesn't even know what question I asked, but I think she could put that together. I don't know if I'm gonna have me on video, but this might be really, really close, but I can literally, I'm crying. I feel emotion right now, Seth.
Yes.
Thank you for speaking with us.
I hope you get Lisa.
I hope so too. It's in case people watching didn't hear Megan said, I hope you get Lisa. I hope Lisa sees this video.
Speaking to me for the
speaking to me for the...
There were 2 syllables, but I couldn't understand them.
Seth, can you repeat that last word? Sometimes it's hard to understand.
Wait.
I wonder if I could see like a new plot, but then also new here. That could be kind of relative too.
Good. Goodbye.
Goodbye, Seth. Do you have to leave? Hopefully I'll be able to get this message to Lisa and Bob. Thank you, Seth. I do really appreciate you talking to us.
Welcome.
Thank you. Alright, I'm gonna tap Megan. I saw you crying. I'm crying.
I'm wondering, because it was like, it said speaking to me for the, and I wonder if it was like for the goodbye, like he just wants to say goodbye to someone still. Which of you guessing is Bob?
I asked, you know, like, do you have any friends or family that I could bring a message to that maybe they would see?
Did you
this?
ask, like, were you like, do you visit anyone? He's like, Mother.
Oh yeah, I asked if he gets to travel around and visit others here, or if he had other family buried here too. And then I asked if he gets to walk around, and he said sometimes. And but right before you got Lisa and Bob, I had asked, like, do you have like a message? I don't know how many people will see this video, but do you have a message for anyone that might see this video? And he said, I love you, Lisa, and Bob needs to come visit him. And you were crying, you were feeling it, I was crying. That I told him, like, that was beautiful. I just really appreciate that.
So you see there at the end of that, the 2 of us were in tears, and it wasn't just the message he said, it was a feeling in the air. There was an emotionally charged feeling with Seth's communication there, and just absolutely a beautiful, beautiful moment. He says, you know, thank you for speaking to me for the goodbye. He says, live good lives. Asks us, you know, to get a message. He loves Lisa. Bob needs to come visit him. Such a human interaction. You could see that being just very, very real. And we have a very small following, so hopefully Lisa and Bob saw this, but if not, I'm glad that we were there to communicate with Seth. The last video I have is a bit of a fun one. We weren't actually investigating. We were just wandering around Mount Olivet Cemetery. Megan was wearing a recorder because she was reading information from different gravestones, and then we could look up the names later on. It was a good way to be able to look back and see who she'd been reading the stones of. So we weren't really expecting anything when we were listening back to it. And we got kind of a playful EVP. So EVP is electronic voice phenomena. It means that on the recorder, we're going to hear a voice that was not heard at the time. Megan starts reading one stone. We hear the EVP. She moves on to the next one. We hear the same voice say something else. I'll let that play.
Richard Cheatham, Weaver. February 10th, 1895 to August 31st, 1917. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Thomas Weaver, M.D., 1873 to 1918.
So Richard Cheatham was a young man when he passed away, and as Megan is reading the stone before him, he's like, hey, come read me. And then when she finished and moves on to his brother's stone, just such a young teen. He's 19 years old when he passed away. He's like, hey, come back here. You're like, I wasn't done talking to you. What are you doing? Come on back. We have gone back and we have communicated with him again, and he's a fun one to communicate with. So obviously and you can tell from the title of this that when we talk about the ethics and the question of whether or not should we or should we not investigate in a cemetery, clearly we think we should. That is a lot of what we do when we are doing investigations. We go to cemeteries a lot. Beautiful places to walk around and to remember. What are our next steps with that? What do we do with that? One, we get to have these beautiful interactions like we did with Seth, like we did with Joseph, like we did with Richard. But also, I mentioned Find a Grave, right? We can go on there, we can update the inscriptions that are on gravestones. People that are doing genealogy research can look at those pictures and see the pictures, or just see an update. Maybe it's not genealogy, maybe they've moved away and they just want an updated picture of a family member or loved one or friend that they can no longer go visit the grave for. If we see that photo request, we can update it. You can also visit local cemeteries for different events. City Cemetery, we said before, is a very well-kept cemetery, but it's a very well-loved cemetery as well. The people who own it, the Historical Society there, they do different tours of it, and they'll focus on different things. They might focus on some of the famous African Americans that are buried there if it's February. They might focus on women that are buried there if it's March. What's our month? March. They might focus one tour on the different plants that are there. We went to one where they were talking about the different symbolism in the stones. When you see, a hand with a finger pointed up, or what does it mean if the chains are broken, and that kind of stuff on the stones. So it's a great place to go for local events. For us, it's a great place to go to hear the stories and hear the communication with the spirits that are there.
And then also bringing it back to, if by visiting these cemeteries and speaking with these spirits, reaching out to these spirits, intentionally trying to communicate with them, we're creating an egregore, then part of that is trying to keep the best of people alive. Talked before about Sonder and full lives. Don't want to focus on the worst day of their lives. You want to focus on them as a whole person and, what they might have loved, like with Seth, or who they might have loved. And it's important to be intentional too in the naming of buildings and parks and schools and bridges, because by naming them after someone, you are keeping an aspect of that person alive again. And so that's going to show what you as a society value in who you're naming things after and why you're naming them after.
A very good example of that is right by us, down the road from us, along the state highway, there is a bridge called Tyler Head Memorial Bridge. I've driven over it a bunch of times, and I never really thought about it. And then one time I was like, you know what? Who was Tyler Head anyway? So I looked him up. So Tyler Head was a young man. He was 20 years old when he passed away. He loved the agricultural life. He planned to own his own farm. We're in rural Tennessee. He was attending Austin Peay for agricultural studies, specifically agribusiness. He had actually, by 20, had already purchased some equipment for the farm that he was going to own. He had purchased some cows and a bull for the farm that he was going to own. He had been telling his parents since he was young what property he wanted to buy someday. He, at 20 years old, had a beautiful love for the rural life in Tennessee. And unfortunately, while I think he was driving to school, he was struck by an impaired driver and he was killed on February 3rd, 2012. As a result of them naming that bridge after him, they in some way keep him alive. They keep that beautiful spirit that loved rural Tennessee alive, and they tell visitors and anyone passing by on that bridge, this is what we value. We value a young man who loved the agricultural life, who wanted nothing more than to own a piece of land, be a farmer, own his own business, that had a plan, and, unfortunately his life was cut short. But that's what we're showing, or I should say, the community that decided to name that bridge for him, that's what they're showing is important to them. That is the aspect that they love, that they want to remember, that they want to memorialize, that working spirit, that rural love of the land. It's a beautiful thought, and I think we've spoken a lot about intention and remembering and keeping someone alive through speaking their name, and that all comes together with that bridge. The final thing is, when you're going to cemeteries, you can leave flowers, you can leave coins, you can leave stones. You are leaving something to show that you were there and that you remember that person. So really quickly, because I said we are going to come back to it, and then I just didn't speak about it. But I referenced the fact that we went to John Wilkes. I went to John Wilkes Booth's grave. We've mentioned Lincoln a bunch in this. So he is actually buried in a family plot, but it's an unmarked grave. But you can definitely find it because people leave Lincoln Head pennies on his gravestone. Even though it's not marked, they are showing that he, in his action of assassination of President Lincoln, did not win. So that's our presentation on the 3 deaths and cemetery exploring, and hope that you enjoyed that kind of discussion of a lot of what we do when we are doing paranormal investigations. It's all fun to talk about things like Rockville, Indiana State Sanatorium, or the Monroe House, or the Crescent Hotel, but something as simple as walking around a cemetery with an audio recorder is a perfectly good paranormal investigation, especially for people that are saying that they want to get started in it. That's what I tell people a lot. Just get yourself an audio recorder and go walk around a cemetery for a little bit. You will be amazed at the communication that you can get there. Just make sure you keep it respectful and be ready to have fun with it. So thank you very much for watching. I was Johanna. This is Megan, and we are Travelers Paranormal.